What's up, YouTubers? Hardworker12 here today with an EcoBoost Mustang. Now, I love Ford Mustangs, but I've always had a little bit of a blind spot when it comes to them. And that is that my opinion is if you're going to get a Mustang, get a V8 or don't bother. This was advice I took myself. Years ago, before I'd started my YouTube channel, I actually owned a Mustang GT. Now, the one that I had was a 2010, and of course it had a V8. But the 2010 Mustang was the last year for the 4.6-liter modular V8, which brings me to an interesting point. Even though this EcoBoost Mustang does not have a V8, it has almost identical horsepower and torque numbers to the 2010 Mustang GT that I used to own. And although my 2010 had a 5-speed automatic transmission, this 2019 has a 10-speed automatic transmission. So, might it be worth your time to look at a 4-cylinder Mustang as opposed to an 8-cylinder Mustang? Well, let's take it for a test drive and find out. All right, so driving the EcoBoost Mustang, the 4-banger Stanger. Now, first of all, just driving this car around in normal mode, that's what the car calls it. We have several different driving modes that we'll get into in a bit. It's not false advertising. It certainly feels normal. It doesn't necessarily feel like a special car, just at normal speeds running around the road, which I guess maybe it shouldn't. You know, it's not, the EcoBoost Mustang is not a wildly expensive vehicle, but at the same time, it doesn't necessarily feel like a muscle car or even a sports car driving around just at normal speeds and normal traffic. The exhaust note is what I find the most disappointing about this car. And maybe that's really why I love the V8 Mustangs. They just have that rumble. Even sitting at a stoplight, you know, you get a little bit of the rumble sound, a little bit of the vibration. You know, this engine's pretty smooth. It has a little bit of a 4-cylinder vibration, which is not muscle car feeling. But yeah, it's sound-wise, it's a little bit disappointing. Now, the 10-speed automatic is smoother than I probably expected it to be. 10 gears is just a lot of gears. And quite frankly, one could argue that it's just too many. You know, it's getting to the point where, what is this, a car or a Schwinn bicycle? I mean, there's a big difference between a 4-speed automatic and a 6-speed automatic, but you get into diminishing marginal returns. In my opinion, there's a much smaller difference between an 8-speed automatic and a 10-speed automatic. And my opinion still is that the ZF 8 HP 8-speed automatic that's used in 10 million different cars is probably the best torque converter automatic transmission on the market today. But the Ford 10-speed is not bad. It doesn't really hunt through the gears too much, and in normal mode especially, you don't feel it shift. I mean, it's amazing. I don't know if you can see down on the digital dash that I have, since this is an EcoBoost premium model, but it tells you what gear you're in, and it's really weird to just be cruising at normal speed and you look down and you're in 7th gear and you don't realize that it's apparently shifted gears 6 times. But at some point, you know, what are we going to have next? An 11-speed automatic, a 12-speed automatic? You know, where do you realistically go from here? All right, so now I'm on a road with a little bit less traffic, and I have put it into the Sport Plus mode. Supposedly this changes the steering. I don't really feel too much of a difference in the steering wheel. It feels about the same to me as normal mode. The biggest difference that I notice is actually in the transmission. It definitely holds gears longer, and it's a little quicker to downshift when you give it some gas. But also the shifts are crisper. You feel them more when you're in the Sport Plus mode than when you're just in kind of the normal mode. You kind of feel a little bit more shift shock, and I suppose that, you know, I don't know if that's programmed in there to let you know that the transmission's doing something. As you can see there braking, it also downshifts a lot more swiftly. And you get a little bit of sound from it when you rev it up there, but it ain't no V8, that's for sure. And it does seem like Ford could have put some kind of more aggressive mufflers on the car from the factory to give you a better sound from this 2.3 liter EcoBoost engine. I think that may have been an intentional choice on their part to make the Mustang GT that much more appealing to people, because if you were to test drive this on a Ford lot and then test drive a Mustang GT, the difference is huge, but the price difference is also considerable. So maybe some of that sound that this car is lacking that the GT has is kind of a conscious marketing / engineering decision on Ford's part to get people to pay the extra money for the GT, because it does give you that more aggressive sound, which I think is really important to people who are looking at a car in this segment. I mean, you know, let's face it, this is a muscle car, this is a sports car, whatever you want to call it. So you kind of want to hear the engine, and you know, you can hear it in this car, but it's not very impressive sounding. I feel like if I had one of these, I don't know, I'd have to be figuring out if 10 series Flowmasters or MagnaFlow something or other, or what would give me more sound out of it. And the other thing is, you don't really ever hear the turbo, which is also disappointing. I love turbocharged 4-cylinder engines. I've owned many different cars that have them, and hearing the turbo in some way or another is something that I really enjoy. And you know, in a mass market car, you know, because just about any car these days is available with a turbocharged 4-cylinder engine. You know, if it's in a Ford Fusion, which they don't even make anymore, but you know, in some kind of economy car like that, it makes sense that they would kind of downplay the turbo-ness of the engine. But I don't know why they wouldn't give you some whistle or give you some wastegate noise, or somehow make the turbo more noticeable in this car. I mean, somebody who buys this car, hey, it's a sporty car, it's not a V8, but it's got a turbo, but you don't really know that, and that's a disappointment to me. I wish I could hear the turbo. Track mode now, baby. Doesn't really feel any faster in track than it does in the Sport Plus. Supposedly this dials back the traction control a little bit. It's actually telling me on the dash that the traction control is off. I have a feeling that some parts of it are still active. If I were to try to kick the tail out or something, it would just peeled out a little bit there. I will say the steering does feel a little bit more lively in the track mode. This seems to be the mode where it does weight the steering up a little bit and kind of give you a better feel on the steering wheel, more so than the Sport Plus, and definitely more so than the normal. I don't really feel much difference between the normal steering and the Sport Plus steering, but when I get into the track mode, the steering definitely does feel heavier. All right, so driving the EcoBoost Mustang on the highway feels fine. The ride feels a little bit stiffer at highway speeds than it does around town, but I wouldn't call it jolting. It's just you can feel the road. It's got a little starch in it, no problem there. It does. It feels a little lazy unless you give it a good stab of the throttle. If you're just kind of cruising along and you adjust your foot a little bit and it only drops down 1 out of the 10 gears, you don't get a whole lot out of it. But if you floor it, it'll drop down 3 or 4 gears, and then you get more performance. But it's just, you know, aside from a little bit stiffer of a ride, the steering is definitely very accurate. Doesn't have a ton of feel, but you can place the car well where you want to. And it definitely does perform, but it just somehow, I don't know how to explain it. There's something lacking, and it's definitely something that a Mustang GT has. I've driven one of the newest Mustang GTs with the 460 horsepower engine, and that car is just a ton of fun, and it feels phenomenally fast at any speed that you're going. This one doesn't feel slow, but obviously you don't get the same sort of joie de vivre that you get from a GT. Let's see if we can get some joie de vivre here. God, you know, it's not slow, but it doesn't feel fast. It doesn't give you any kind of excitement. At least it doesn't do that for me. You know, I had a 2017 WRX STI, and that's kind of my baseline as far as what I compare performance cars to. And you know, this is probably as fast as my STI was in that kind of acceleration, but it doesn't feel it. It doesn't give you the excitement. It doesn't, I don't know. I'm gonna be honest, I personally am disappointed with this car. I don't know. I could recommend it if you just like the way a Mustang looks. You want a 2-door car, you're okay with a little bit of performance, but you're not overly concerned with it, then yes, I could say go ahead, get an EcoBoost Mustang, it's fine. But if you're out there and you're looking really for a performance car, I don't know that I could recommend an EcoBoost Mustang, at least not in stock form. And this one doesn't have the performance package, which was a new option for the 2020 models. This is actually a 2019 model. So I don't know how much that changes the equation, if that would feel different enough to where you would say, yeah, this is a genuine performance automobile. But you know, if you're looking for a fast car, this ain't it. You know, again, I mean, if you're coming out of a Toyota Yaris and you get into this, yeah, it's gonna feel like a hot rod. But if you're used to driving cars with a higher level of performance than the average car has, you're not gonna be overly impressed with this. At least I'm not. And I think you may be able to do better somewhere else with your money. I mean, you know, I would even look at, say, a Challenger RT with the 5.7 liter Hemi. That's not as fast as a Mustang GT, but it's quicker than this, but more importantly, it feels quicker than this, and it gives you more of a sense of occasion than this has. Speaking of sense of occasion, that is a 1 Series convertible in front of me. You don't see that every day. So yeah, anyway, this is, you know, I like the way the Mustang looks. I think the older ones might have looked a little bit better. The ride's decent, the handling's decent, the acceleration's decent. I'm just, I guess that my opinion really hasn't changed. I think if you're gonna get a Mustang, you gotta go all in and get a V8. And I say that as a person who loves turbocharged 4-cylinder engines and thinks that they can be very phenomenal motors, but I'm not really impressed with this one. I mean, again, you don't hear the turbo. It doesn't have that much of an exhaust note. You don't really get much intake noise out of it. You don't hear the wastegate. It's just a car. I mean, it looks fancier than the regular car. It's fine, but I don't know. Mustang, get a V8 or don't bother, baby. That's the Hard Worker 12 advice right there. In conclusion, if I were ever going to buy another Mustang, which I might someday, I would certainly still choose a V8. I would not consider a 4-cylinder or a 6-cylinder or anything else, at least at this point in time with the current engine options that are available. However, as time goes on, that may change, and you obviously are not me. So a 4-cylinder Mustang may work well for you. If you're just looking for a fun car with good styling that's faster than your average commuter car, an EcoBoost Mustang is definitely that. But if you're looking for muscle, sorry, I can't say that it gives you that. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you so much for watching. As always, please like and subscribe, and have a great day. Bye-bye.